Alright, 2006 Dodge Grand Caravan. This fix applies to many years of the Caravan and the Plymouth Voyager. I think the years are from 2001 till 2008, or whenever they changed the body style. But the problem is the rear evaporator develops a leak because they have two dissimilar metals touching and there's galvanic corrosion, plus the salt gets in there, and what it does is, I'm not going to be able to get the camera under there. I'm going to try. You may not be able to see this, but right up in here you will see two lines that come from the front and they go up into the rear evaporator coil, and there's a leak right about in here that develops. Probably 60 to 70% of Caravans in that era. And what'll happen is it could be a fast leak where you'll just go out one morning, start up, and there's nothing. And it could go that way, or it could just develop a slow leak where your air conditioning will start not working as good. You'll notice your compressor cycling, and over a period of time it'll slowly get worse until it just won't work anymore. So it's not a very hard fix. Working on refrigeration systems, it's not rocket science. You'll go online, there's a lot of people that'll try to scare you with this, that, and the other thing. But out of all the systems out of the car, it's pretty simple. The biggest problem with working on your air conditioning system is the refrigerant. The R134 is expensive, so if you don't find a leak and you leak it all out again, you got to buy new stuff. So what I do to find out if there's a leak is, the first thing I did is I hooked my manifold set up to the low pressure side, opened it up, and the gauge didn't move. It's empty, there's no refrigerant in it. So from that point you proceed to pull a vacuum on the system. With that, I use this vacuum pump that you can get at Harbor Freight for under $20. Hook it to my manifold set. I've had it on for about 15 minutes. I had it up to about 30 inches. And that's just, I think it's 30 inches of mercury, and it's now down to about 20, so there's definitely a leak, and I have a feeling it's in that rear evaporator. I'm not going to take it apart and look at it. I'm just going to block the system off and then try to pull a vacuum again. Now, if you're like me, you are super cheap, and you can actually do this job cheaper without a vacuum pump, without a manifold set. You could do it with just one of these. You could hook it up and, just to tell it, there's no refrigerant in it. It obviously leaked out, so there's a leak. Just go ahead, block it off, and fill it back up with refrigerant with this. I'm not saying you can't do that. You could, and there are people that have done that successfully. The problem is if there's any moisture in the system, because the system was opened up when you put the plugs in to block off the rear AC, and it ices up in the orifice, you could blow your compressor. And I'm not saying that won't happen. I know there's plenty of people that have done it and that hasn't happened. And that's just, if you do it that way, that's fine, and I respect that. But it's not worth it to me, so I went ahead and I bought the manifold set. You can get this set at like 50 bucks at Harbor Freight. It's worth it. And you need a vacuum pump. This vacuum pump, you need a non-oilless compressor to run, because you're going to have to run it for like 60 minutes, and those things have a habit of getting hot and burning out. So as long as you have a compressor like this that will run that vacuum pump, I suggest just getting the $20 vacuum pump and doing the job right. Now, to block the rear AC lines off, there's this nifty little kit. Don't know if you're going to be able to see that, from streetrodguys.com. It is expensive. It's about 50 bucks. It's only a few little fittings, but it's worth trying to hunt around for these fittings. I don't even know where you'd get them. Maybe they make them themselves, but all it is two plugs and the O-rings needed to block the AC lines off going to the rear. And I'm going to actually put these, I don't know if I can video this, the lines are right If you can see this is under the passenger side of the car, right there. Sorry, that's upside down. This is under the passenger side of the car, towards the front. That's where you're going to put the plugs in, right there. And that's going to block off the AC to the rear. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull a vacuum on the system, and that'll isolate that part of the system and tell me if that's where the leak is. Alright, there it is with the plugs installed. I just use 2 adjustable wrenches because you don't have to go all He-Man on these. They're O-ring fittings. So just tighten them a little over hand tight, and that'll be sufficient. It's only aluminum. And the old lines, I am going to just put a plastic plug in them, and then I'm going to zip tie them up so everything's secure in case I ever do decide to fix the rear evaporator. I don't want all kinds of stuff getting inside the lines. And I'll probably zip tie this up secure somewhere too, just so it doesn't rattle around. So now I'm going to pull a vacuum on the system, and I'm going to make sure there's no leaks. And if there's no leaks, then we know for sure that the problem was in the evaporator in the rear. I would also like to point out that when you do break these lines apart, you're going to get some mineral oil out. That's normal. It's nothing to worry about. When you recharge the system, you're going to want to put 1 can of R134 with oil in it. Don't put it all with oil in it, but just 1 can, and the other 2 cans have it with no oil in it, because you are going to lose some when you break this line. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull a vacuum on this. Unfortunately, I left my tripod at work, so I'm going to try to do this without it, just so you can hear this pump run. To grab this, I'm going to plug this in here. That's it. So now it's pulling a vacuum. Oh yeah. I'm going to pull a nice vacuum up to about 25 inches. Alright. That's good. 28 is enough. I'm just going to go ahead and shut this down. Shut my pump off. Now I'll just wait to see. I'll give it like 30 minutes and see if I lose any vacuum. Alright, so after about 50 minutes, it's still holding the vacuum that I put in it. And during that time, I buttoned these lines up so they wouldn't bounce around. Just use some zip ties and some duct tape to put over them. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and put a stronger vacuum on the system, and I'm going to run it for roughly about an hour, just to boil any moisture out of the system before I recharge it. So I'm going to go ahead and hook my pump up. And I'm going to apply the vacuum to the system. And you do want a certain vacuum on it compared to the air temperature. This one actually buries the gauge, so I figure that's good enough. It's about 30 inches of mercury. So I'm just going to let that run. Alright, I got sidetracked there, so it's been a few more hours. You can tell it's getting dark out. I don't like filming in the dark because my filming equipment is not Hollywood quality, but let's give this a try. I got pretty good light out here. So as you can see, it's still holding a vacuum, about 30 inches of mercury, so that's fine. It's been holding that for like 3 hours. It's not going to leak. So in the interim, I went to Napa and I picked up everything I need. If you look at your little label right here on your car, for the single evaporator AC system, it says about 1.5 pounds of refrigerant, and it says for the dual, which this had, 2.38, It's actually going to be somewhere in between that now, because there is some extra line there that didn't get capped off, that just runs underneath to where the caps are. But I went to Napa, and they can look up what you need too. And they called, I don't use the refrigerant with the oil in it, only because you don't want to load your system up with oil. If you put too much oil in your system, it won't work. So if you're doing a complete refill from scratch, they recommend 6 ounces of oil. Now, I only lost a little oil. This can is 4 ounces, but I'm probably only going to put 1 or 2 ounces in, because that's about what I lost. So I'm going to use this can, and to put oil in I am going to use one of these, just because I don't want to run it through my manifold, because when you run through a manifold, you want to get the air out of this line, and it's just easier to use one of these, I think, for oil, but you can use whatever you want. And then I got 3 cans of this refrigerant. They're 12-ounce cans. I think I'm going to use about 25 ounces, but again, it's a guess, because it's not a single system now, and it's not a dual system either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the car. I'm going to start the AC up. I'm going to put the 2 ounces of oil in, which is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to put the thing on. I'm going to tint the can upside down. I'm going to let in about roughly 2 ounces. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the first can in. And all this is on the low side. Never put anything on the high side. So it's going to be the blue hose. Yeah, and then I'm going to hook the can to the yellow hose. When you first turn your AC in on a fresh recharge, the compressor is not going to run, because it's tripped out on a low pressure cutoff, because there's not enough pressure in there you'll burn your compressor up. So I'm going to start the AC, and when I put this first can in, it may or may not start the compressor, but by your second can, the compressor should start. And it'll be cycling rapidly, and as you put more and more of the refrigerant in there, you'll notice that it starts cycling slower and slower. And what I do is I'm going to bring it up to roughly 30 pounds of pressure. You never want to go 50 or over. 15, anything over 15 is considered okay. I usually get it up around 25, 30, somewhere in that range. And it's going to vary too. As the compressor shuts off, it's going to go up a little bit. That's normal. When the compressor starts, it's going to go way down. But as it goes down, as you get fuller and fuller, it's not going to drop all the way off. So you'll see. Unfortunately, I forgot my tripod for my camera. And when I start this, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me. But I'm going to try to do it with holding the video camera. We'll see how that works. Alright, I tried filming it while I was doing it, but I just couldn't hold the camera, so all I did was what I usually do is I start with the can this way, and I just tip it back and forth and let the gas drain out, and then I shut it off again, and then I tip it upside down to force liquid in the can into it. One thing you always want to do is you always want to wear a glove, because this can will get cold. So as you can see, I have the low side up to about 30 pounds, and the high side is pushing about 250 pounds while the AC is running. That is actually a little on the low side for the high PSI, but I'm going to leave it right there. I think that's good. The system took about, let's see, 12, 24, 30, about 32 to 35 ounces to fill up. So, there you go. And the AC is ice cold right now, so it's working good.